Want to know what the movers and shakers of New Hampshire's performing arts are thinking? Welcome to New Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
This is Ray Dudley, Artistic Director for Square Peg Productions. And here's an interview that is a long time in the making. I have been after the folks at Not Your Mom's Musical Theater since back in August, way pre-COVID. And finally, I was able to sit down with Jamie and Ross and talk about all things NYMMT. God, these folks are busy. We talked about their professional series, their concert series, their touring series. They have a podcast called Finishing the Season. They have a blog called rossandjamieadventure.com. Go out and see that. It's just crazy. We got into discussions about ASCAP and BMI, and this is just a packed interview. You're really going to like it.
So, not having ever met that I know of, I'm Ray Dudley, and it's nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you
Jamie.
as well. And I'm Ross. And go ahead, let's do that again.
I'm Jamie Feinberg.
And I'm Ross Malcolm Boyd.
Well, welcome both of you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been long in the making here. I was trying to get this done pre-COVID. I didn't get to see the show, but I saw what was going on at the Hat Box. And I thought, okay, those masks look pretty interesting. What in the freaking world? So I tried to reach out, and you guys were already, I think, maybe even mid-production. And then it fell in the cracks, and COVID hit, and bigger crack. And so but thank you for picking up on it. I'm really glad that you let me do this with you.
Absolutely. We're excited to do it.
Good. So I am very intrigued. I've been out to your YouTube page, which, to be honest, is a little thin.
Yes.
I think the last thing I saw out there was 7 years ago. So
yeah.
just saying. And I went out to your website, and I went out to your Facebook page, and I hit Twitter. And so I want to get you on record because I'm very intrigued by what you've done here, the niche that you've chosen. I'm very curious about how well it has come about for you, if you think it has gone well, where you think it'll end up going. But before we get on to that, how about laying some groundwork with me and talk about where did this idea come from? Who thought up the name? Who thought we need to get these kind of interesting puppets / masks / whatever going here? So go ahead, fill me in. How did this whole thing get started?
Absolutely. So the idea, I guess the name, first of all, of Not Your Mom's Musical Theater was something that popped into my head long before I actually had any plans to start a theater company. And it was just like, oh, if I started a theater, that's basically what it would be, right? It would be alternative theater, things that people didn't necessarily perform very often. So lesser known stuff. And yeah, so the name was just a name. And in fact, a friend of mine knew that I had created the name and with no plans to do anything with it. And he nudged me and said, you should just get that name registered in New Hampshire, and just so it's there if you want to do something with it. I was like, all right, I don't know, but sure. And the actual reason the theater company got started was because Joshua Boynton started Boynton's Tap Room. And when he was in the planning phase, he put out the call for directors, musical directors, anybody that knew anything about theater that might want to get involved there. And basically, I think he had a nonprofit in the space, but wanted to be doing shows in the bar space in the evenings. So I reached out, and we happened to be on the exact same page in terms of wanting to do smaller cast, lesser known theater, things that really hadn't been done in New Hampshire, weren't typically being done. And he wanted to partner with me on it. So I said, well, I've got this name. And he was like, sure, we can run with that. And he's got a whole board of people behind the scenes handling the finances. So we hold auditions for the musical title of show, which he tells me we've got the rights to. We hold auditions. We've got a cast. And then he brings me into his office and says, so the finance people have decided that we don't have the money to start with title of show, But yeah, shocking. And
Oh my
and they hadn't actually secured the rights. They had, like the sort of like tentative, like if you pay the money, you'll have the rights, but they hadn't taken that next step yet. So here I am, having publicized a show, gotten a cast that's like a dream cast that I'm thrilled to be working with. And the plan had been to do the majority of the rehearsals in that space. And I was pretty devastated. But what he said to me was, well, I've still got this space. So if you can find the money and you want to do this yourself, then you can rehearse here and you can perform here.
I'm assuming if you could have found the money earlier, you might not have needed him.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not one to say no to a challenge like that. So I said, okay, thank you. I'll see what I can do. And next thing I knew, we'd scrounged together a little board of volunteers that were interested in helping us. And we started fundraising. And you've probably noticed when you've looked at our scattered stuff, our fundraising approach early on was very bizarre. Like we would take $5 and $10 from people. We were literally walking around bars asking people to contribute to our show.
I used to do that in college. So
we had producers, and to be a producer, I think you had to give $100, but it wasn't your money. It was like scrounge up $100 from all your friends, and then your name gets on the program as a producer. So that was our approach. But long story short, it worked. We actually made money on our first few productions, and that's how Not Your Mom's Musical Theater was born.
How long ago was that?
So that was 2010. I think the show was supposed to have gone up. This is like a whole other part of that story. We were supposed to do title of show, I think in September or October of 2010. But because we didn't actually have those rights secured, when we applied ourselves, we found out that the rights had been restricted because a professional company in Boston was doing it.
Of course.
So what I ended up having to do was I dug around for another show that my cast could do to say, hey, we've already got the space. Let's do a show together. And then as soon as the rights are available, we'll do title of show. So, and I didn't know, it could have been years. I had no idea how long it would be before we were able to get the rights, because if that was one professional company, who knew who else might have already lined up the rights. I didn't know. But yeah, it worked. So then we chose the show, The Musical of Musicals, The Musical, which is a great show. And it parodies the styles of 5 different composers. And it was really a great way to launch our company to say, we know musical theater and we love it. And also we can make fun of it and we can play around and we can do, we can have 4 actors on stage playing a variety of characters, doing a variety of different things. And it just basically doing a production it was all about the performers and the performance that they gave. You didn't need fancy costumes, lights, set, what have you. We were in a bar.
I don't even think you needed 4 chairs for that show.
No, I don't even think we did, Ross. So that was how it got started, and it kind of put us on the map. People saw it and were like, oh, this is interesting. And it also had the added benefit that the cast got to know each other really well. So when we got the rights and were able to do title of show in January of 2011, they'd already been working really closely together. And the musical title of show is about a group of friends. So they're supposed to have this established camaraderie. Nice. And it just couldn't have been more perfect that they've been working together.
Nice. How about your background? What was happening before you decided to shoot off on your own and start your own group? Not an easy task, by the way. What were you just coming out of college? Were you musicians, or are you? What was going on there?
So I graduated from college, I guess, before I turned 21, and I traveled the country. I worked with Missoula Children's Theater, and then I was doing some professional musical directing. And actually, I was in Wisconsin working for a theater that had kept asking me to saying, oh, stay for this show. And then they were out of shows. And I got a call from my parents.
Wait, saying, they were out of shows?
For the season, no more musicals. They said, "Go home, Jamie. There are no more musicals."
We've done Oklahoma. I don't
Oliver,
know
what else could be done.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I got a call from my parents saying they were getting divorced, and I had siblings back in New Hampshire, including twin brothers about to start high school. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a good thing. And I felt really weird about being away when all of that kind of turmoil was going on for my family. So when I had applied for a couple internships and jobs that hadn't panned out. I didn't know what was next. And then my mom was like, hey, Majestic Theater's looking for a musical director. And I was like, well, it's something. Let me start there. So I went back to New Hampshire. I musically directed with Majestic and then started picking up various like part-time jobs in the arts. To be fair, I also worked at Old Navy for a little bit, but I started piecemealing things. I picked up a job because a woman was retiring from teaching preschool and kindergarten music and movement. So I started working with those kids. I just had a degree in music, just a BA, but a lot of theater experience. And so it was just like anything that I felt remotely qualified for, I would do. So musical directing being sort of the highlight because I can play piano and I love to teach music. So, there was that. Then I started teaching individual lessons and I kind of built this career traveling all over Southern New Hampshire, making a living, not a super financially successful one, but a living nonetheless in the arts. And also feeling like I was sort of having to choose the work based on who was paying me what, rather than the shows that maybe lit me up the most. And that was really where the kind of the seed of Not Your Mom's Musical Theater began, because I was just itching to do more, to do more stuff that I knew was happening in other parts of the country, but that I wasn't necessarily seeing in New Hampshire.
Good for you. Ross, you're kind of falling into the teller here of the Penn and Teller group.
Yes, I am like the Winston Zedmore of Not Your Mom's. I didn't come along until after they were busting ghosts for a little bit. Although no,
that's not really true. You were a founding member of the company.
So I was the boyfriend. I am also yes, I'm a musician, guitar, piano, etc. And I'd been teaching music and I'd been entrenched in the rock scene. So I was off doing rock and roll and Jamie was doing musical theater. I also had a degree in audio engineering, or I was completing my degree at the time. I didn't have it yet, but I was an audio engineer, so I kind of took the technical side of Not Your Mom. So doing sound and lights and whatever kind of other electrical needs came up in the various weird spaces that we ended up.
So you're in the musical theater genre. What, in the back of your mind, you're thinking somehow there's something different we can do here. There's another vein that we can mine that you're hoping would be profitable. I mean, not necessarily, but I know there's the love of the arts and all that, but you'll starve to death waiting for, So what was going on there? What made you think there's this whole area, which, let's be honest, it's not going to attract a lot of people because the shows that haven't heard, they don't get a lot of play time. What made you decide to go in that vein? Was it just really just a love for these other shows, or what did you see going on there?
I think it was a love for the shows, as well as seeing those types of shows being moderately successful in other places. I knew there were companies in Boston that were doing these smaller casts, less conventional musicals. I knew off-Broadway shows, of course, were happening all the time, but, and every once in a while, one would end up transferring to Broadway. Lots of regional theater happening in other parts of the country. So yeah, I knew that those shows were great shows, but also that there were theater companies, not a ton of them, but there were some that were seeming to exist and make some sort of season for themselves that, they didn't die after season one. They were finding an audience doing these types of things. So I think that was a lot of it. And I think I also it's not just that I love those types of shows, but I think there's something about like the rawness of just actors standing in front of you, singing and acting at you, that's always made a huge impact on me. And that gets lost when you're in a big house. It gets lost in a really big show. And when you just kind of peel back the onion to the basics, that just basic storytelling is so powerful. And I feel like musical theater is so perfectly suited to that. And I loved having those experiences with actors, and I wanted to have more of them.
What are you using are you using musicians or tracks? What do you use?
We always use live musicians. One of the things that I'm most proud of is all the shows that we chose, I guess until Goblin Market. Actually, yes, there's one tiny exception, but basically we chose shows that were orchestrated for a number of musicians and types of musicians that we thought we could do as they were written. So the first two shows we did, they just called for a pianist. So the Musical of Musicals off Broadway only had a pianist. Well, conveniently, I can handle that, right? And likewise, title of show, that was part of the appeal of it. All you need for title of show is 4 actors, 4 chairs, and a keyboard, and a pianist or a keyboardist. But so both of those were obviously straightforward. And then when we grew from there, we did a lot of shows, like we did Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson was a rock band. So of course I had been working, like I had created all these friendships with musicians. I knew lots of rock musicians already. We had done some fundraisers before Not Your Mom's officially got started. So again, it felt like, okay, this is in our wheelhouse, and we just figured out how to pay for it. I found people who would work for not a lot. Like I always knew to pay the musicians.
That's most people, most actors.
Right. Yes. But in terms of musicians, I was very much riding this line going, I'm a musician. I think it's really important to pay musicians what they're worth, but I'm also starting this new theater company and we're trying to find an audience. So I always found people that, you know, had a level of passion. So I would say most of our musicians probably took a pay cut, but I wouldn't say we paid them the least that anybody had paid them. So like trying to be in that middle ground where people felt happy to be working with us. And then we kind of grew it from there. So I know when we did See What I Want to See, which is the show I'm most proud of musically that we've done, we lost one musician along the way, like one person backed out. So we were short one of the players that show called for. But otherwise, up until Goblin Market, we had always done everything as written. And then with Goblin Market, we sort of reconceived things in a more like synth atmosphere. So we made a point of reorchestrating that, but that was a new thing for us.
So you've been around now, what, 10 years, right?
Yes.
So what, most groups don't last that long. So congratulations. What would you say was the largest obstacle you had to overcome to get this far? Obviously, the whole title of show disaster in the beginning, but maybe something that you didn't anticipate. You know, you were going along and thought, okay, we got this, we can do this. And then, I mean, you don't have a home, right? You're a traveling troupe pretty much, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, Ross, you might have another opinion on this. I think the challenges...
Ross speaks. Oh.
I think the challenges of being a traveling troupe are significant. And I think we were choosing really unconventional spaces because we didn't have money, frankly. So like, you know, we started out with a free space and that was great while we could do that for free. And then we performed in a lecture hall at the Derryfield School. And then when we did start doing more performances we performed at the Amato Center, but that show, we could only afford a week. And we quickly realized, to develop the momentum, the audience for reviews to get out, like we got a ton of publicity for Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, including, you know, NHPR profiling us, and, you know, it did an interview with me. It was great. But by the time you're getting started and the audiences are coming, then the show closed. Yeah. So that made us go, all right, we clearly need to do multiple weeks. So then the following year, you know, we were doing multiple weeks, but it was killing us financially. And I think if we had gotten started and there was a venue like the Hatbox Theater nearby that was really designed for the performers and the production companies as much as the audiences, I think that would have really enhanced things for us and made it just that much easier, because we were choosing different locations. I mean, we had people coming. Our first survey said people came from 44 towns, so it didn't seem like it was holding people back, that we kind of ended up rotating around. That was, I mean, we know that they were traveling a lot, but
and these are more than just friends and family, right?
Yeah. Yep,
that's impressive.
Yeah, it was. We were pretty psyched about that. But yeah, I think if we had had a regular home, you would get some local people that would naturally get involved, and also you just get the financial consistency, like building that. So I think that was one of the biggest struggles for us. Like developing an audience was tricky, but I think that in particular was part of why.
I agree. Yeah,
because you guys aren't really black box theater, but you're on the cusp of that, right? I mean, again, a lot of titles which you've chosen, I'm not sure so many people know Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. It's not like at the top of their list. So you run that fine line of, we do a show we love, maybe we'll get a few people out, and, you know,
right.
It's pretty hard to walk that line.
It is, and not all of the shows have the same hook. Like, none of the shows are big name shows that we've done, but some of the shows have more of a hook than others. Like Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, we're gonna put on a rock show, and it's like Bloody Bloody, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
That's gonna grab people's attention. Whereas, like, See What I Want to See, which I thought was a brilliant show, just doesn't, like, okay, what is it? Okay, it's based on this Japanese short stories. Okay, and it doesn't have the same, like, gotcha hook as others. Goblin Market, we had like puppets and synthesizers, and people are like, what's going on there? But other shows don't necessarily have that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think part of what we were trying to do was develop, and continue to do, honestly, is develop an audience of people that are specifically interested in new things and interested in checking out shows that they don't know. And I can't tell you how many audience members, including a lot of adjudicators. The whole reason we got involved in the adjudication for the theater awards was because we wanted new people to see the show. And we had so many people say, thank you so much for doing this show. Like, adjudicators specifically would write us and be like, thank you, like, I never would have seen this, but this was fantastic. Or like, I've never seen anything like this in New Hampshire. We would hear those stories all the time. And it's part of the reason that for 4 years, we did a concert series. And part of the reason for the concert series was that a lot of our material, frankly, was at least rated PG-13, if not more adult than that. So we wanted a series that anybody could come to, that, or at least like high school students and middle school students, that their parents wouldn't hesitate to be like, yeah, go see what these guys are up to. Because sometimes that was an issue with some of our shows. And the concerts were specifically about musical theater history. So you'd have an MC or multiple MCs telling you the history behind the songs that are being presented. And like all of our stuff, it was very focused on like the storytelling, because it was just someone on a stage singing at people most of the time. And sometimes you'd have a group of people doing that, but no sets or anything like that. And those were one-offs. So if in some ways that meant we would get decent crowds for a lot of them, because it's like you get one shot.
Yeah.
So if you want to check out what happened in musical theater in 1973, you have one time to check it out.
Come to Derry Sunday, and that's it.
But that was a nice way, I think, of encouraging people to think about musical theater like in a broader context, and where do these lesser known musicals, like, where do they live in the world of musical theater, not just in this like isolated show. And that like, I think necessarily starts to teach people that there's just something interesting about musical theater, and particularly, musical theater they don't know, right? Because Annie people go out because their family and friends are in it. They can see it anywhere. That's most of what that is.
Yeah.
And and when you do a small cast production, if you've got 4 people, their friends and family are only going to go so far.
Right.
So yeah, so you have to develop an interest in a wider way for people to come check out something they don't know.
Have you, as a group, toyed with the idea of writing your own? Because you seem very passionate about this, the individuality, the uniqueness of the program. So are you guys writers as well? Have you thought about climbing that mountain?
Yeah, I am a songwriter, so that's like my passion is writing music. So I've been writing with my rock bands and writing for short films and podcast themes and et cetera, for a long time. And since the beginning, I've kind of been throwing out the idea. It's like, hey, let's write a musical. Hey, let's write a musical. And it's a pretty big undertaking. I think we've got a notebook full of ideas to pursue. We've kind of toyed with some particular concepts in different places, various like offers here and there. I worked on a TV project that didn't take off, like a musical TV show. But yeah, it's definitely on the table. I think Goblin Market is kind of closest to what we've done, because I did reorchestrate the show for synthesized like a couple keyboards and weird guitar and sound effects and stuff like that. So kind of reshaping the sound of a show is as close as we've come thus far, but it's certainly not off the table.
Yeah, we're still, we've had a couple projects, I would say, that almost took off. We also collaborated with the theater company like very early on in our first year on sort of like an original like skits and songs type of a thing, and they kind of contributed some original material for that. So it's very much something we talk to people about. Like within the last year, we've had some conversations. We have leads. I wouldn't be surprised if that's honestly the next the next
thing,
frontier for Not Your Mom's Musical Theater. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it would be in the line for the next evolution. I mean, I don't know, and I apologize, I don't know the group, but just listening to you talk and where you've come from, it would seem like that would be the next outcropping for you, that you'd want to tackle that. Yeah. So there's two of you on screen. Are there more people involved?
Yes. So when we got started with Not Your Mom's, it was like friends and family. But of course, over time, we stay relatively connected to the actors and most of the crew and whatnot that we've worked with. And we've got tons of people who come back. I think we had at least one actor that did all but two of our productions. And we always had open auditions. I think I think Goblin Market was the first time I ever precast. Is that accurate? I'm not lying.
I think that is true. Yeah.
So even with our tiny shows that were so dependent on the actors, Goblin Market was the first one. And that was because Goblin Market's vocals were more akin to opera and therefore like a sort of different realm from anything we had ever done before. And I knew that the actors in New Hampshire who would be capable of doing that would be much more limited. And Ross and I now, like, we're full-time RVers and we travel. So when we're not in New Hampshire, I knew I might be rehearsing with people remotely.
So you wanted to have that personal connection. You wanted to know what people were capable of and also have enough of a rapport with them that if you were rehearsing remotely, that you would know what's going on and they would have the confidence to know that you had their back and vice versa.
Right. Yeah. I didn't want to be just hoping for the best, or in the situation that we held auditions and then the right people didn't come out. And now we're 6 months out and I'm across the country. And what are we going to do? Because it's basically a 2-person show. Goblin Market, we added a couple of actors who did amazing dance and puppetry and other special effects to enhance the show. But at its core, Goblin Market is written for 2 women. So I knew I needed 2 of the strongest people I'd ever worked with. So we did precast on that one.
Yeah. Was that the show done at the Hatbox?
Yes, that was the one at the Hatbox.
Beautiful shots too. Jane did those, right? Jane Button?
Yeah. That was our first time working with her. Yeah, just gorgeous work.
Since you don't have a home, what's like the most bizarre place you've ended up performing at? And you must walk into these places and go, yeah, no, this wasn't what we thought, but...
That's definitely happened.
Yeah, I think playing my own like original material, we've probably been in some pretty strange places. The first show that we got when we first hit the road, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Was Bisbee, Arizona. Touts that they have the smallest bar in the country, and it literally has 3 stools in front of the bar. And I was actually performing in the room outside of the bar because the bar couldn't hold me and my guitar.
Yeah.
So that was pretty wild.
Phone booth. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty much, yeah.
So for the theater, we created a touring company after the first year of our concert series that was I think 4. We started with 4 select actors sort of performing the best of from our concert series. And so we would go around and that was like a professional gig. So if people called and they wanted Not Your Mom's to have an appearance somewhere, we would pull from that group. And we were asked to perform in Montreal as a part of a theater festival.
Oh, yes.
Yes. and it was this wild, like the theater festival itself it was long running, but the man who'd founded the festival had gotten horribly sick, like right leading up to it, to the point that he was a one-man show. And so when he went into the hospital, we didn't get the memo about what was going on. So we showed up for a festival, and the first night of the festival, thank goodness, was on, but we spent hours calling phone numbers to get somebody to let us in the building and then like let us into the rehearsal. And basically we were there for 2 nights, but the first night was supposed to just be, oh, you're just going to do a couple of songs. Like this is like a preview of what's coming. And then the rest of the festival. But then they canceled our big performance. So we did that one night and the rest was done. And we're here in Montreal. And so we had this group of actors that had rehearsed this concert, and it was, a tight concert. So what we ended up doing, because we wanted to be able to say that we'd performed it in Montreal, was we knew that there was this piano project and they were public pianos around the city. So we just found a piano.
Brilliant.
And just, yeah.
And we did.
We just went for it.
We did the set, and there was like a restaurant across the street, and like they kept like they were our captive audience, because they were just sitting there having a meal, and they like we'd finish a song and they'd start cheering.
Oh my God, you're like buskers out there, just panhandling for money.
It's so true. It was wild. It was wonderful. It went over better than I could have imagined. It was just like
that was a wild experience.
That was side of the road. Yeah, that was a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have a central core group of actors that you carry with you? I mean, and not carry with you. I mean, obviously, you say you're traveling. So that's impressive, first of all.
We got a big backpack.
So we've always thought of Not Your Moms as like a professional company or not always, I guess, but what evolved, I guess, within like a year or two was having like our professional core group and then a community group. And that came about because we hit a point where we wanted to do larger shows, but financially we're realizing not quite like Oklahoma.
I've seen your page, so
yes, I know. I love it.
I know your disdain. I get it.
I actually personally have some love of Oklahoma, but I think there's a place for musicals that are not Oklahoma, and I love those equally. Yeah. I think amongst the Not Your Mom's crew, I've had to convince some people about Oklahoma.
Me among them. I think PBS did the Live at Lincoln Center, started showing the Live at Lincoln Center of Carousel. I'm like, oh, wow, that's like a good show, huh?
It's amazing.
Did you hear her loading the gun at that point?
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, when we started getting into like casts of about a dozen, I was concerned that our previous model, we were paying actors sort of as the leftovers, like whatever money's left, we're going to split it. And I was looking at the budget going, I don't know if there's really going to be any money left. We're scaling up. We're doing bigger sets, bigger houses, 2-week runs. And so that was when we said, okay, we're going to do community theater productions. And then our touring group will be professional. So we continue to have a touring group that's available. If somebody wants to mount the musical of musicals, if somebody wanted to mount Goblin Market, we could talk to them about staging professional productions of those. And we can also do concerts. If somebody just wants a singer or a couple of singers, we performed at lots of events in that way, just doing selections from musical theater. We've done like holiday themed selections from musical theater. We did a bunch of performances up the Mount Washington Hotel, for instance. So I'm starting to lose my train of thought, but yes. So we've got professional and community, I think, like in that way. So if somebody right now were to say, hey, I want you to perform, it would be pulling from our professional crew of folks who we've worked with in the past, who's rehearsed. We would just have to brush them up. If we were to stage a new show, then it would be a conversation around, okay, what are we doing with this? Goblin Market was a professional production. Again, I felt like you've got a 2-person show. Those demands were so high. I didn't feel, part of it was like, I love my actors, I want to respect them and pay them. But part of it was also, realistically, if they bail on me, I'm screwed. So I need a financial incentive for them to stay here. You know, it was a 3-week run at the Hatbox, and we were all in on that show.
Boy, I have so many questions. I'm also embarrassed because back in August, when I got the email from the Hatbox, I'm like, well, this is a nice new group. I wonder where they're from, you know. That's my ignorance. So I'm begging you to forgive me here.
That's fine.
So, you're not the only one.
I don't know how I never heard. I mean, I've been here for years and years. I never heard it. I'm like, well, that's so sweet. And I love that cute little name. God bless them. So when you first started and you have this idea of where you want to go, sometimes these projects take on a life of their own where either the audience is requiring you to move in a certain way or the growth of the group changes a bit. Did you reach a point where you had this fork in the road and it either took you there or you said, no, we need to stay here with the original intent? Did that ever happen?
I think to some degree, like when we started off, we were doing very small cast. And then over time where we kind of like got a little cocky and it's like, all right, let's do a big show. Let's do
12 people.
Yeah, let's do a whole 12-person cast. That would be amazing. So I think as we were growing and expanding, we were also kind of like hitting some blocks and it's like, okay, well, this is there are pluses and minuses to this and kind of making decisions I guess even from the beginning, we were making decisions based on like what we could do, and what our capacity was kind of dictating what we did next. We never wanted to take on something that we knew that we wouldn't be able to do, but there was like just a complete pipe dream, but we always wanted to challenge ourselves as well. Do you want to expand on that or go in a different direction?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think I was lucky that with the folks who founded the organization with me, and then like future board members and whatnot, volunteers, people have always been very supportive of my vision and what interests me. And I think my interests naturally evolved too, and it's true for all of us, but as you're doing things, you realize what works. I think wanting to expand the cast is in part because there were more and more people that wanted to be a part of Not Your Moms. When we started out, it was like, oh, let's find 4 great people. And then, as more people are interested in being a part of what you're doing, then you start to think a little bit bigger. And as we grew, we had a set designer or multiple set designers who were like, hey, I like what you're doing. We had brilliant lighting people saying, hey, I like what you folks are doing. And so now you start thinking bigger when you've got more resources and more people that are interested in getting involved. And I think the concert series was kind of that too. When we started it out, I had no ambitions of doing that, but I started to want to fill a void, to say, okay, there are all these people who want to see our shows, but they're too young, so their parents probably don't want them there, or it's not the right fit for them. And then also feeling like there was a real spot, like there was a need for more education about musical theater. And I think I felt like that's part of the legacy that Not Your Moms can share with New Hampshire in general, that people got exposed to all these other shows. And we were like, it would be wonderful if we do a show and then somebody stages one of these shows that no one's heard of from the 80s or whatever it is, that they get inspired to think outside the box and do something a little bit differently that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise.
Kudos to you on that one. Talk to me a little bit about the touring company. Was that always something you had planned on, or did that evolve from what happened? And for people who maybe don't understand how much work it is to get something like that going, can you elaborate a little bit on how you found connections and how you put it out there into the ether and how people found you? Can you get into that?
Sure, absolutely. So when we started, I didn't picture it as a touring company. I think, when we started it initially, it was like, okay, well, we're in it for this one show and let's see how that goes and go from there, right?
The touring company really branched off from the concert series.
Yeah.
So the Something Wonderful I Missed series, where it was the pick a year and explore the musicals and context of shows from that year. And we just started building up this giant songbook of material. And it's like, oh man, we could pick some of our favorites from all of these concerts and do a touring show.
I think that's exactly it. Yeah. If you figure each concert probably had 15, 20 songs in it, and you do 5 concerts in a year, that's a ton of material. And not all of those songs were maybe performed at the level that we would want to take as a professional production, but a lot of them were. So I think I got the idea. I was working for the Congregational Church of Henniker as one of my many, many jobs. And they were doing some concerts at the church, outside groups coming in and giving performances. And I thought, oh, maybe they'd be interested in this, and spoke with them about that. I think that was the first one that we did, if I remember correctly. And then because we were creating it for them, there was the idea of, okay, well, let's find some other places. So I guess the whole time Not Your Moms has existed, we always were sort of looking for spaces that we could do things, if that makes sense. So I think we were already kind of in that mindset. But for things like the concerts, it's fairly easy to find a place. The one challenge that we ran into was the licensing companies like ASCAP. They want to deal with the performing, with the venue. They do not want to deal with the performers. But we knew for a fact that some of the places we would want to perform had not ever bothered to get an ASCAP license or a BMI license. So that was a challenge. And we reached out to both ASCAP and BMI, and ASCAP eventually heard our pleas and said, fine, you can give us money. Great. BMI, on the other hand, not so much. And so it wasn't an issue for us for a while. And then we were partnering with the restaurant, and I got a phone call from the restaurant saying, hey, BMI's on my back because we're advertising a concert here and I need to give them $200. So we're like, all right. And he's like, I'll split it with you. We're like, okay, sure. So that is a challenge people should be aware of if they want to do some sort of concert series like we did. You do need to be really deliberate about the licensing, and it kind of falls in this gray area when you're going around and performing in unconventional spaces. You know, a regular like theater or something like that that's doing, you know, bringing in performances all year, they will of course have their licenses in order, but not every church, not every bar necessarily does, unfortunately.
Right. And it's a little bit different where we were doing concerts as opposed to fully staged productions. For the most part, we did musical of musicals on the road, and that was a different animal. We were hired to do, like, they brought us in, so we didn't really need to worry about the legal issues. But as the touring company doing the concerts, usually when you're doing a musical, you get licenses for the show. But as a concert, like, you're dealing with songs. It's more like playing a cover set somewhere. So you've got like all of these potentially different companies with the rights to a bunch of different songs,
all with their
that you have
hands
to
out.
contend with. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, it's wild to me to see how many places don't carry blanket licenses. I've played at a bunch of like bars and stuff like that don't pay for blanket licenses. Any bands that come in have to do all original material. It's wild.
Not to throw anybody under the bus.
Oh,
you know.
no. But I did get yelled at for playing Moon Age Daydream at a bar once.
Oops.
Whoopsies.
So you, pre-COVID, you've had all this wonderful momentum. And how many shows a year were you doing?
Well, that's a good question. So honestly, Not Your Mom's, when I guess through 2015, we were doing our concert series. So we were doing 6 concerts a year plus some professional productions. We had stopped doing, like, we hadn't done any full scale community theater productions since 2013. Basically, I think we have kind of shifted at this point to mainly just focusing on the professional end. And I think that's because like the way our life went. We got married in 2014, and then 2015, we wrapped up the concerts because Ross and I knew we wanted to hit the road and become full-time RVers. So that made life a lot more interesting.
You think?
So yeah. So from that point on, it's been, what are we really lit up about? So we haven't gone, like right now, I can't tell you what's next, right? Whereas before, we always knew what was in the pipeline.
Right.
I would say before we hit the road. And then we hit the road and it was like, okay, I was getting calls. I flew back to New Hampshire to do some concerts. And if we were back in the area, we would put on concerts.
Yeah. Jocelyn's show.
Yep. Yeah, we put together a one-woman show with Jocelyn DuFord that was, again, really created because of the concert series. She had performed all these beautiful solos in the concerts, and I invited her when, I guess, yeah, I don't know if it was 2014 or so, but Ross and I were living up north in Franconia for a while, and Ross had a teaching studio in Bethlehem teaching lessons, and they did a First Friday night. And so I invited some of the Not Your Mom's performers to come up and perform, some of our professional folks. And Jocelyn's like one-woman concert for, I don't know, 45 minutes or whatever it was. There were people that were transformed watching that. And we're talking about a tiny kind of dingy looking studio that's got seating for maybe 8 people, and the actor's breathing on you. Like, that's the space. And people were in tears watching her perform. And I was like, you know what, there's something here. Like, we knew there was something special, but like, also this stands alone. Her just standing and singing these songs stands alone. So then we put together a show which was called Jocelyn's ABC. The first time around, it was called Alphabet Broadway Cabaret. More recent versions have been Adult Broadway Cabaret, because there are a few more adult numbers to acknowledge that. But yeah, so we created that show with her. So we've kind of gone where our performers wanted to go, or where people call and say, hey, do you have anything in the pipeline, anything that you can bring to us? And that's why we brought Musical of Musicals back. We got a phone call saying, hey, we're interested in, this was a touring venue in Vermont that said, hey, we're interested in working with you. What do you have available? And we're like, oh, well, it's been a long time, but I think this show would fit your needs. And so then we planned a tour around it and started reaching out to other venues as well. And that was why we brought the same show back. The show that we had done in 2010 when we couldn't get the rights to title of show, we did that again in 2016 with mostly a new cast, but one of the actors was consistent, and he was the co-director with me to get it back up on its feet again.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been kind of whatever comes up, whatever inspires us for the past 4 years. When we're back in New Hampshire, it's like, okay, let's do a thing, and that's how Goblin Market came about. I think we were just in the car, like I think maybe did Hatbox reach out to us?
I think they'd put out the word that they were going to be having their pitch night. Exactly.
Yeah. And so we said, all right, if we're going to do a show, what show would we do? And we started like just bouncing ideas back and forth, and Goblin Market came up, and it's like, yeah, we could do it like close to Halloween. And I'm like, yeah, we could do like a whole like Jim Henson sort of thing. We could do like a Dark Crystal Labyrinth sort of thing, and like really play up the synthy music and puppets and stuff like that. And it was just like us talking in the car, like as we're driving, talking about, well, what would we do? And then we just started really getting excited about this idea. It's like, oh yeah, we can do this and we can get this. And that's how that happened. So whatever the next thing is, I'm sure it's going to start off with, what do you feel like?
Man,
exactly.
Oh, man. Well, that's really organic, though. That's tremendous for a couple of reasons. One, you're willing to do that. Not everybody's. That's why Annie exists in Oklahoma. So, but I'm deeply impressed here. You have the longevity, you have the energy, you have the insight, you have the courage to do these things and tackle them. You're not afraid to do them. So COVID hits, that puts the brakes on everyone. And so now you've had chance to ruminate. You've had chance to kind of see where things are going or not going. How has this impacted NYMMT? Is that right? Yeah. Try typing that when you're old into like Twitter and stuff. What have you been sitting on and thinking about? Because it's given us all a chance to pause and breathe. But especially for folks like yourself who are more creative, you really are more of the innovators here. You pick up these things and you run with them. And so almost for you folks, it can almost, I don't want to say it to be more devastating, but because I know the mind works and it doesn't stop just because COVID hits. You have that creativity and that energy that you have got to get out. So I'm guessing you're preparing for down the road. How did COVID stop you in your tracks, and what you see maybe is going to happen for you?
I think the biggest hit for us with COVID was we had a bunch of live performances scheduled throughout the summer. And, we were talking about what we were going to do when we came back to New Hampshire in the fall. And of course, all that was just wiped clean. It wasn't like particularly creating projects. It wasn't like a new show or anything like that. It was just performing work that we would already be doing. And that got wiped clean. And I think, I know it affected me a lot in the sense that like having shows lined up, having those performances lined up are a big thing for me. And like any musician is or performer is going to feel that way. But like I've definitely been missing that. And thinking about like, well, how do I fill this void? Doing Zoom jams and streaming stuff, but it's not the same as being in the room with a person. Like I do a lot of ukulele stuff and working with ukulele groups and wanting that feeling of 20 people in a room strumming together, singing a song you don't get that anymore. And I really, really miss that community. I think anything that we're planning moving forward, we're definitely going to be hurting for that togetherness that we can't really capture virtually yet. I mean, who knows? This might inspire the new technological revolution that brings us closer together no matter how far we are away. But what about you, Jamie?
Well, yeah, I mean, for us, in terms of the short term, we were planning to go back as musicians at the Hatbox over the summer. And of course, that production got way postponed. So that was Mano La Mancha. For Not Your Moms and thinking about like our future creative projects, we've been spending a lot of time like brainstorming podcast ideas and things like that are like kind of a different vein, but a way to get the creativity fix. In terms of what this is going to mean for actually getting back to a stage show, it still really remains to be seen. And musical theater in particular it's just, I know there are companies out there right now trying to find safe ways to do it, but for us, unless you've been quarantining together, we wouldn't have the comfort level of people on stage performing musical theater right now. And so it's gonna be really interesting to see a year from now, or however long, 6 months, to see where things are at and what we think about. And then also, if we think about like touring and where we're going to go, like what kind of precautions the venue is going to have to take. And even just having the conversation with your actors, because I think that's part of it, is everybody has a different comfort level right now in terms of what they would even consider doing. So yeah, I mean, when you get into music and then amplifying music, it's really tricky.
I haven't gotten too far past the stage of mourning, getting to that next in terms of performance. I've been writing like crazy, but without much of an outlet for all that stuff. But I joked about having like astronauts, space suits, like performing in space suits and stuff like that. And then the Flaming Lips have recently been doing concerts where the entire band and the entire audience are in these self-contained.
Oh, I saw those, the bubbles.
Yeah. Which is a really wild idea. But stuff like that. Like how can we bend this to our advantage? What can we do given these constraints? How do we make that work to our advantage? And like, I think Oklahoma in space, my idea for Oklahoma in space could finally come to fruition.
Could be.
Pigs in space. I get it. Doing Oklahoma. Yeah.
Yes.
I think we forget, right, that we, as performers and actors and innovators, we live off the momentum. It's built into our psyches, even if it's subconscious. We finish a production, we go to the audition, or we're auditioning in the middle of a production that we're in. And we just keep this cycle up, and then all of a sudden it stops and the fix is done. And we start these withdrawal symptoms as performers, as innovators. It has to be even brutal for you. I mean, I just perform, but I can't imagine being a creator and having to just have somebody pull the plug on it. I feel bad for you, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, we feel bad, and we feel bad for all of the other performers and creators and innovators. It has been inspiring to see what a lot of folks have been doing online. Video collaborations and stuff like that have been really, really wonderful to see. It's obviously not the same, and it's obviously not what we would like to be doing right now, but it's still impressive to see how many people are pushing through anyway, and kind of saying, all right, this isn't going to stop us. Like, it's going to change what we're doing and how we're producing, but it's not going to stop us. So that's definitely been inspiring and giving me a little bit more hope as soon as I can kind of like get past the mourning phase to actually act on that hope.
I think for me, I think in some respects we're lucky because Not Your Mom's Musical Theater was the passion for a long time. But since we've hit the road, we have other sort of simultaneous things going on. And I know for you, Ross, like you're still a musician that's like desperate to be out performing and performing your own work. And I totally get that and why this is a really challenging time for you. But for me personally, like I blog, I write for different places, and we've been building businesses. Like I've got a life coaching business, and we teach music lessons online, and thankfully online music lessons, this is a great time to be an online music educator. So
yeah, I think professionally we are lucky that like we lost a lot of gigs, but we didn't lose all of our income streams. There are a lot of folks who aren't as lucky as we are in that like their entire livelihood was performing or staging productions. All of my friends in live sound, everything that they're going through right now is awful, or not going through now. It's absolutely devastating and disheartening. And again, we are very lucky. The theater company being what it is, like we don't have any overhead. We don't have to pay staff. It's not like a big theater. We've always been this weird little floating entity. So something like this isn't going to destroy Not Your Mom's. Not Your Mom's isn't going to go out of business, but we're definitely in stasis.
It's painful, isn't it? It's painful.
It's incredibly painful. It's incredibly painful and disappointing. I think we're listening to the episode that you did with Andrew Pernard recently, and talking about early in the year, we were all kind of thinking, okay, when this is over, this is what we're going to do. It's like, by the end of the year, we're going to do this. And all those plans, it's like, oh, we just got to get through this. We just got to get through this. And just that sinking feeling when you realize, oh, we're not going to go back. Like, it's not it's not going to be like it was before. Yeah. Like, it's devastating to think that, like, you know, that it's never going to be what it was before, but there is also like this glimmering excitement on the other side of like, okay, well then what's it going to be? It's going to be something new, and we have control over how to make that new thing be as cool as it can be. Again, I'm still in the mourning phase. Like, I know that sounded optimistic and hopeful, but
But see, this is my point. This is why my hat is off to folks, like, because the creator won't stop. This is the thing, and I know it's painful, and I get it, but you can't stop people who, like yourselves, are innovative artists who create. It's what you do. It's your DNA, and you're already looking at, and in the back of your mind, you're fomenting some way to adapt to it, to get around it, to work with it, to go through it. It's what you do. It's what you do. It's impressive. It really is impressive.
It's a very Jamie problem to have, actually, because she thrives on like, all right, you have to solve this problem now. It's like we put you in this box. Like, I mean, I don't think we would have done anything that we've done professionally if it weren't for Jamie's ability to kind of see a problem and figure out how to solve it. Any of the like the financial hurdles that we've faced, be it with the theater company or with staging shows, figuring out licensing, all those murky waters, like, it wouldn't have happened if Jamie I would have just been like, can't do that. They're just gonna keep us down. We're not gonna be able to get through. Are you kidding me? I'm not gonna call ASCAP. What are you talking
about?
We
have to get you out from under your blanket to do this interview? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah. Pretty much. So, I mean, like, Jamie, like, is like, in a lot of ways, I'm a problem solver in much smaller, more specific areas. But Jamie is like a big picture, like, how are we going to do this? And I definitely, one of the things that I feel really lucky about is that I've got Jamie to kind of guide us through this mess, because, again, she's looking at the big picture. And like, as much as I'll wallow and like, I don't get to play with my friends anymore, like, she'll be like, no, but like, these are the steps that we're going to take, and we're gonna see the other side of it. And I hope that people out there have a Jamie to guide them, because it really is.
It's sweet. Don't you just like
but it's so depressing, and like, you know, I think all of us are just kind of like attached to the news and devices and seeing what's going on, and like how depressing the world is right now, and we just need somebody to kind of pull us out of it and say, hey, we're gonna do this. It's gonna be all right.
Well said. All right. Well, we've hit here a little over an hour, and I really appreciate your time. Anything else you want to tell the world about NYMMT? Or
I would say folks listening probably listen to podcasts. So we have many months of a podcast called Finishing the Season, which is a very, I mean, do you want to explain it?
Yeah,
it's 50-something episodes I saw, right?
Yeah. It's a silly show about musical theater. It started off as a game that we would play, talking to each other in the car, obviously driving around a lot, as we do. We have to keep ourselves occupied. So I would always ask Jamie things like, if you could only cast so and so in shows, like what shows would you pick? And that's kind of became the premise of the show, is like these hypothetical seasons at a hypothetical theater. And there was a lot of silliness that went into it too. We kind of fell off for a multitude of reasons, but we're still proud of the shows that we did so far.
So is this where the idea generated for Pigs in Space doing Oklahoma? Is that
it? that's just I just always I just always think that a musical, any musical, is better if it's in space. So that's just a long-standing belief that I have. Annie in space, you know, it's gonna be better.
I feel like that conversation probably started looking at like all the productions of Shakespeare and the different ways people will stage a Shakespeare play, for instance. And so the idea, I guess you could do that with a musical. And I feel like that's when you had your brilliant Oklahoma in space.
Yeah.
We'll see. If anybody out there wants to do it, just make sure you credit us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Send the check.
Tag us so we know we can come watch it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Jamie, Ross, I really appreciate your time. I know you're on the road and this can't be easy, but
thank you so much. Yeah, no, this is really wonderful. It's great to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe we'll meet face to face. Who knows? I have no idea now. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Enjoy New Mexico.
Will do. Thanks.
And there you have it. Another great one in the tank. That one's going off to the memorial. Listen, if you really enjoy these podcasts, do us a favor, pass them around, tell your friends about them. If you want to learn more about Square Peg or what we do, you can head out to www.squarepegnh.com or you can find us on Facebook. Have a great day.